Something you long believed to be true but realized wasn't.
Well, as one of the main opponents of the Illuminati, I always wanted to know what information they had that we didn't.
On the drowning death of Malcolm-Jamal Warner. Now, according to ABC7, they stated that Malcolm-Jamal Warner had drowned.
Tonight, we're unpacking the question Hollywood hopes you're too distracted to ask. When a black star refuses to play the clown, does the industry quietly move him off the board? And why did Katt Williams spend years warning us about the cost of saying no? This story centers on Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the thoughtful artist millions met as Theo, the disciplined craftsman his peers adored, the protective father who kept the cameras at arm's length, and the chilling way his name only roared back into headlines after reports said he drowned while vacationing with his family in Costa Rica. Before we dive in, do me a favor. If you want fearless, receipt-driven deep dives that cut through PR fog and internet noise, tap like right now, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you stand. Was Malcolm sidelined for his principles? Or was the timing of all this just a tragic twist of fate?
He says, the thing about a black boy is you don't necessarily want to beat a black boy. What you want to do is you want to love him so divinely. You want to love him so fiercely that your disappointment will kill him.
Your voice shapes what we investigate next, and I read every single take, so sound off below. All right, let's get surgical, because once you see the pattern, it's hard to unsee. First, the moment that shook fans. According to the reporting cited in today's video, Malcolm was on a family trip in Limon, Costa Rica, when a deceptively calm shoreline turned treacherous. A rip current, a narrow, rushing river of water that pulls outward from shore, allegedly caught him and his 8-year-old daughter in its grip, the kind of silent hazard even strong swimmers underestimate. Nearby surfers saw the struggle. One reportedly pulled the little girl to safety, while another went for Malcolm. By the time responders arrived, attempts to revive him failed.
When it hit me, how my dad named me and what he was doing, because now I'm having this influence talking to young people. I remember being 15 years old, I called my dad, I was like, yo man, you set me up. And he laughed.
And later statements described the death as an accidental drowning. Beaches with shifting sands and no lifeguards can look like postcards, while hiding rip channels you don't spot until your feet feel the bottom disappear. Whether you've waded into the ocean or not, you know that instant spike of adrenaline. You don't win a fight with the sea by brute force. You think it. That detail matters because faithful viewers of Malcolm's work recognize it as a metaphor for his career too. There are currents in this business you don't see until they pull you. Which brings us to the man behind the headline, not the headline itself. Malcolm-Jamal Warner never chased viral attention. He curated a body of work. Emmy-nominated actor? Yes. Grammy winner? Yes. Poet, director, musician, activist? Also yes. But what made him rare wasn't the resume, it was the refusal to compromise the image of black manhood for access. He loved the craft but rejected the circus. He kept his private life private. And when he spoke on fatherhood, it wasn't brand-safe fluff, it was specific, grounded, and soft-spoked in a way that cuts through the performative masculinity Hollywood packages and sells. He didn't stumble out of clubs for paparazzi candy. He wasn't a trending hashtag every other week. He was the guy who shows up, prepared, delivers, and goes home to his family, daring to believe that dignity is still a career strategy. That kind of man inspires loyalty, and yes, it quietly terrifies machines that run on spectacle, because spectacle is easier to control. So how does Katt Williams fit into this? Katt has spent years, decades warning that the biggest rewards flow to those who accept the industry's unspoken deals. Play the caricature, wear the dress, pad the fat suit, wink at the stereotype, and an escalator appears where a staircase used to be. Reject the deal, and the escalator turns into a trap door. This isn't about personal beef, it's about patterns and power. Listen to Katt's language over the years. Some of us are against the Illuminati at our own detriment. They don't want me or people like me. Look who wore the dress and try to find who failed. His point isn't the garment, it's the ritual public compliance televised as comedy. Say yes, and the machine showers you with prime slots and brand-safe magazine covers. Say no, and suddenly you're difficult, unstable, hard to market. And here's where the hairs on your arm rise. As Katt absorbed parody after parody on Saturday Night Live without an invitation to the stage itself, He read the subtext out loud. Impressions are how gatekeepers tell you what they think of you, and the funniest joke to them is the one that trims your edges down to a silhouette they can sell. Apply that lens to Malcolm. After the Cosby phenom, he could have accepted a pipeline of loud sitcoms and slapstick bit parts designed to flatten a complex black man into an overgrown boy. He passed. No fat suits, no wigs, no clownery. The short-term trade-off was obvious. Fewer headlines, fewer blockbuster checks. But the long-term gain was integrity, and integrity doesn't trend until it dies. That's the quiet punishment. You don't get canceled in a grand public ceremony. You get slow, faded, like a song whose volume someone keeps turning down in the booth until it disappears under ambient noise. Yet Malcolm refused to play small. He built lanes. He jumped to projects that nourished community, history, and memory. He made a podcast, Not All Hood, that pressed against the lazy idea that Black life is a single story you can package in 30 minutes with a laugh track. He attacked the monolith narrative with specificity. Different zip codes, different dreams, different rules, and if you're a Black creative hearing that, you feel seen. Then, in 2021, he sharpened the critique in an op-ed for the Television Academy, naming what many whisper, white executives still hold the keys to the images, and even during inclusive cycles, the stereotypes sneak back in wearing nicer suits. The characters' jobs change, but the jokes don't. The tone doesn't. The low ceiling remains. Malcolm's argument was subtle and devastating. If the structure is wrong, painting the walls a darker shade isn't renovation, it's masking. And Hollywood hates specificity when it threatens the formula, which is why artists like Malcolm feel both respected and resisted, praised for excellence, punished for boundaries. Meanwhile, Katt keeps lobbing truth grenades into the conversation, not because he's bitter, but because the receipts are consistent. He calls the humiliation ritual a system, not a superstition. Look at who makes it, and how, he says. Look at what the breakout role demands. Look at what the press suddenly forgets when a star says no. You start to see the beats. And when a man like Malcolm opts out of those beats, watch how the spotlight behaves. It drifts. Ask yourself, did he fall off, or did he refuse the choreography? The culture side of this matters too, because Malcolm didn't just critique Hollywood's gaze, he challenged hip-hop's mirror. He called for a moratorium on lazy misogyny and relentless N-word hooks, arguing that the reflexive use of slurs and the performative violence had calcified into defaults that squeeze out tenderness, awe, and gratitude, the very emotions that once expanded the genre's heart. When a Drake versus Kendrick feud hijacks Oxygen, Malcolm's position wasn't pearl-clutching, it was surgeon, precise. What we signal to the world becomes the world's excuse to flatten us. If every hit must include a dead body, a slur, and a woman as a prop, don't act surprised when boardrooms treat those tropes as market research. That critique earned him side eyes in a culture that rewards bounce rate-friendly chaos, but it's the same spine he brought to casting decisions. He wasn't afraid to be the guy who says, "No, that gag costs too much." And every no in this business carries a price tag, a caller ID that lights up less often, a marketing meeting that runs long, a sudden allergy to your kind of nuance. Look around and you'll find a dozen careers built by saying yes to tropes while preaching representation on press tours. That's not shade, that's anatomy. And then comes the most predictable beat of all, the posthumous halo. The minute reports of Malcolm's death hit, timelines flooded with tributes. Networks teased memorial packages, streamers rummaged in vaults for unreleased content, and celebrity captions crystallized into a single, brand-safe tone, underrated legend. The word underrated does a lot of cowardly work here. It sugarcoats neglect. It turns a decade of strategic silence into an aesthetic choice. It lets institutions mourn the gap they helped widen without ever confessing their fingerprints. Katt has a word for this too, cleanup. Once you can't talk back, your image becomes currency for everyone who ignored you. They graft your integrity onto their brand, they platform your greatest hits as proof of their support, and they harvest engagement from the very legacy they once declined to amplify. If that sounds harsh, ask yourself why love so often arrives when it's safest, when there's no risk you'll reject the terms. Why is a man easier to call brilliant when he's not around to ask for better rooms, bigger budgets, or honest marketing? Fans feel this hypocrisy in their bones, which is why the tributes were met with as many side eyes as tears. And for those saying, but maybe the industry never blocked him, maybe he just chose smaller lanes, let's swivel the camera. Look at how often Malcolm's own team allegedly heard the same whisper over the years. Too serious, too thoughtful, not marketable. Translate that: too black without apology, too adult for infantilizing jokes, too principled for the easy bag. Look at the roles he declined, roles other actors vaulted off of into blockbuster status. There's no resentment in that comparison, only context. Everyone chooses their path, but a system that only calls you brilliant after you refuse to be its punchline is a system telling on itself. And because visibility and viability are twins in this town, Malcolm's choice to prioritize purpose over popularity meant certain audiences lost track of him, not because he stopped creating, but because the big megaphones stopped pointing in his direction. That's the slow fade again. You're still singing, the speakers got turned down. So what do we do with a story like this without turning tragedy into content? First, we honor the person by engaging the work he insisted on. The podcast that refused the monolith, the projects built around memory and justice, the criticism that asked hip-hop to expand its emotional range. Second, we interrogate our own clicks. Do we reward caricature while claiming we want complexity? Are we complicit in the algorithm that buries artists who decline clown suits? Third, we hold the machine accountable with receipts. If networks and streamers want to call him a legend now, they can retroactively platform the nuance he fought for fund the next generation of uncompromising storytellers, instead of cutting tribute reels that end at the credits. Finally, we listen to the person who's been screaming from the rafters for years, Katt Williams, without reducing his warnings to memes. He hasn't just been right, he's been early, and if you're still unsure, run the test, he suggests. List 5 artists who put on the costume and failed versus 5 who put it on and soared. Then list 5 who refused the ritual, and watch how much extra work it took to be seen. The pattern is the point, which brings us back to the shoreline. A rip current looks like calm water, it's the lane where waves don't break, the path of least resistance. Swim straight into it and you burn out fast. Survive it by staying calm, by moving parallel until the grip loosens, by trusting wisdom over panic. Malcolm's career was a parallel swim. Katt's commentary is the lifeguard yelling instructions from the sand. And us? We're the crowd on the beach, deciding whether to keep filming or to throw a rope. I'm choosing the rope. If you are too, amplify artists who protect their dignity, not just the ones who entertain your worst expectations. Tell me in the comments if you think Malcolm was quietly punished for drawing a line, or if the timing of the tributes is just coincidence playing cruel. If you felt that slow fade at your own job for refusing a shortcut, I want to hear your story. Smash like if you value integrity over algorithms. Subscribe for the follow-up where we map other careers that mirror this pattern. And share this with a friend who still thinks underrated is a compliment. Because until we change what we reward, the machine will keep handing roses to our truest artists only when they're gone, and calling that justice.